The skies over the Midwest were calm, but something deadly was about to shatter the peace. At 35,000 feet, a massive airliner carried nearly 300 souls toward Denver, when suddenly the co-pilot slumped over unconscious, leaving the cockpit in chaos. Panic rippled through the cabin, passengers unaware that their lives now hung on a single pair of hands. The captain wasn't just any pilot. She had a secret. One that had been buried for over a decade. Skills forged in combat and missions that most people couldn't even imagine. Today, those hidden talents would be the difference between life and death. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, comment below where you're watching from. A bustling airport terminal was alive with travelers, rolling suitcases, and the hum of jet engines. Amid the chaos, Captain Elena Reyes walked with quiet authority, adjusting her navy blue uniform and scanning the gates with practiced ease. At 39, she carried herself like someone who had stared danger in the face and walked away. Yet to everyone around her, she was just another airline captain on a routine flight. "Morning, First Officer Liam," she called with a polite smile as he approached the gate, his tablet in hand, ready for another smooth ride to Denver. "Always," Captain Liam replied, unaware that Elena's idea of smooth skies had once involved life or death. Aerial combat rather than coffee and in-flight announcements. Passengers streamed past, chatting and laughing, oblivious to the hidden storm of skill and experience behind the calm eyes of their pilot. To the outside world, Elena was competent, calm under pressure. A pilot who could handle turbulence or a minor mechanical hiccup with ease. What they didn't know was that the hands guiding the yoke had once flown fighter jets capable of unmatched speed, deadly precision, and missions that left enemies in flames. For 12 years, she had worn a mask of normalcy, hiding a legendary past in plain sight. 12 years ago, Elena Reyes had lived a very different life. The roar of jet engines at 30,000 feet wasn't just background noise. It was her world, a battlefield where split-second decisions meant life or death. She had been one of the most feared fighter pilots in her generation. Known by the call sign Valkyrie, a name whispered in briefing rooms and mission reports alike. Her jets had danced through skies over hostile territory, outmaneuvering enemy aircraft with skill that seemed almost impossible. Each confirmed kill a testament to her precision and courage. But that life came with a price, a burden that never left her. She had lost comrades, including her closest friend and wingman, Captain Sophia Blake, in missions that haunted her even in dreams. The metal cases, the flight logs, the photographs of triumphant but dangerous missions, they were all reminders of a world she had chosen to leave behind. Elena walked away from military life not because she lacked skill, but because the weight of command, the responsibility for lives in combat had become unbearable. So she traded her fighter jet for a commercial cockpit. Her battles for spreadsheets and schedules, her enemy for the unpredictable turbulence of civilian skies. And for 12 years she had flown unnoticed, a ghost of her former legend, hiding Valkyrie beneath the uniform of Captain Reyes. The Boeing 777 climbed smoothly into the clear morning sky, sunlight glinting off its polished fuselage. Elena ran through her pre-flight checks with the calm precision of someone who had spent years perfecting every move, her fingers brushing controls that now felt almost familiar under civilian hands. Passengers settled in for a routine flight to Denver, some dozing, others scrolling through phones, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. Her first officer, Liam, was chatting about Denver's weather, a mundane conversation that contrasted sharply with the memories in Elena's mind. Dogfights, evasive maneuvers, the deafening crack of enemy fire. Then, in the span of a heartbeat, the ordinary became terrifying. A sudden gasp from Liam froze her blood, followed by the sickening thud of him collapsing against the controls. Panic began to ripple through her like electricity. Yet Elena's training kicked in instantly. Every muscle remembering drills performed under far deadlier circumstances. She checked his pulse. Pale, weak, barely breathing, a medical emergency at 35,000 feet with no co-pilot at the controls? As she called for assistance, her mind raced through the calculations only a fighter pilot could make. Fuel, altitude, approach options, contingencies, all while thousands of lives depended on her decisions. The routine flight had transformed into a crucible, testing every ounce of skill, courage, and calm she had buried for 12 years. Elena's heart pounded, but her face betrayed nothing as she realized the enormity of what had just happened. Liam, her trusted co-pilot, lay slumped in the cockpit, his body limp, his life hanging by a thread. The aircraft was massive, over 200 tons of metal and fuel. But the responsibility of keeping it in the air had suddenly fallen entirely on her shoulders. She pressed the flight attendant call button, her voice calm but urgent. "Cabin crew, I need immediate assistance in the cockpit." "Medical emergency?" "First officer incapacitated." Within moments, the head flight attendant appeared. Eyes wide as she took in the situation, and Elena's mind immediately shifted to survival mode, compartmentalizing fear and adrenaline into cold, precise calculations. This wasn't turbulence or a mechanical glitch or a minor emergency that could be shrugged off. It was a life and death situation with 283 passengers depending on her. She assessed the plane's instruments, confirming everything else was nominal. But one thing was clear. Every pre-flight assumption, every autopilot routine, every standard protocol would now have to be executed under extreme duress. Liam had been her partner for years, and now the weight of flying a Boeing 777 alone bore down on her like gravity itself. She coordinated with the cabin crew to move Liam out of the cockpit safely, her voice steady, issuing orders with surgical precision while mentally rehearsing the steps to maintain control of the aircraft. "Any doctors on board?" she asked, scanning the cabin with her mind as much as her eyes. But the truth was grim. There were no other airline pilots, and the only private pilot could barely handle a single engine plane. Autopilot was engaged, but that was only part of the solution. Every radio call, every approach calculation, every contingency now rested on her. Her mind flashed back to training, to missions over hostile skies, when a wingman depended on her split-second decisions to live. And suddenly, the skills she had buried for over a decade came alive. She ran checklists almost instinctively, fingers dancing over controls with the fluidity that had once made her a nightmare to enemy pilots. Denver Center was on the radio asking for her situation report, and she replied with crisp clarity. "Single pilot operation, first officer incapacitated, 283 souls on board, requesting priority landing." The controller paused, the gravity of a solo pilot managing a jumbo jet clearly registering on both ends of the radio. Elena recalculated fuel, speed, and approach options, knowing that any mistake could be catastrophic. But the military training she had once sworn to leave behind was now her only lifeline. She instructed the cabin to keep passengers calm, masking the fear in her chest with a practiced smile in the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor medical situation. Everything is under control. Please remain seated." Outside the cockpit windows, the sky remained deceptively peaceful, betraying none of the tension inside. Yet inside, every decision, every mental calculation, every ounce of nerve and skill mattered, and the clock was merciless. Elena ran through every scenario: engine failure, weather changes, approach diversions, emergency landings, all while stabilizing the plane and keeping herself composed. She felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that had once carried her through combat missions. But this time, the battlefield was thousands of feet above civilians who would never see the danger coming. The emergency became more complicated with each passing mile. Denver was still over an hour away. Liam was still unconscious and she had no backup. But Elena wasn't just a pilot. She was a strategist, a leader, a warrior hidden in plain sight. And for the first time in 12 years, her past and present collided. Every movement, every decision, every call she made had to be perfect because there was no room for error. The calm voice she projected over the intercom belied the storm inside her, a storm of fear, responsibility, and resolve. And as the plane began its descent toward Denver, it became clear she wasn't just flying an aircraft. She was holding hundreds of lives in the balance. A solo captain against the impossible, her skills were the only thing standing between survival and catastrophe. Just when it seemed the situation couldn't get any worse, Elena's instincts kicked in, sharp and unyielding like the edge of a blade. She had flown jets where lives hung in the balance every second, And suddenly all those years of training, missions, and split-second decisions surged back with vivid clarity. Her eyes scanned the instruments, then the sky beyond the cockpit, mapping the safest path through turbulence, potential obstacles, and emergency protocols all at once. She realized that autopilot alone wouldn't be enough. The plane needed a steady hand, someone who could anticipate danger before it arrived, someone who had danced with death at speeds that would make most pilots dizzy. And in that moment, the mask she had worn for 12 years, the calm, unremarkable airline captain, fell away. She adjusted the throttles, manipulated the flaps, and coordinated with air traffic control in a voice that was calm but commanding. The same voice she had used to lead fighter squadrons over enemy skies. Outside, Denver's skyline was drawing closer, clouds thickening, gusts picking up, visibility dropping. But inside the cockpit, Elena had found clarity. She recalled the aerial maneuvers she had once executed to evade missiles, to outsmart enemy pilots, to protect her wingmen, and began adapting them to the massive airliner, moving with a precision and foresight that no ordinary pilot could match. The turning point wasn't just skill, it was mindset. The ability to see multiple moves ahead, to remain calm when chaos threatened to overwhelm, to trust herself completely. Elena ran emergency checklists almost instinctively. Each motion a memory of missions she could never speak of. Every calculation a lifeline for the hundreds of souls depending on her. She communicated with Denver Center with flawless clarity, requesting the optimal vectors, managing her altitude, and preparing for an approach that would push both plane and pilot to the limits. And then came the first real test. A sudden storm front appeared on the radar. Winds gusting unpredictably, lightning flashing through the clouds, the runway still miles away. Where any other pilot might have panicked, Elena felt a surge of control, of purpose, of clarity that only comes from someone who has faced death more times than they can count. With steady hands and a fighter pilot's intuition, she began guiding the plane through the turbulence, banking, adjusting, calculating every second to maintain speed, altitude, and trajectory. In that instant, the flight transformed from a desperate struggle into a controlled operation, her hidden talents beginning to tilt the odds in her favor. For the first time since takeoff, Elena realized she could not only survive this crisis, she could master it. And as the passengers remained unaware, she had become something more than an airline captain. She was a guardian, a strategist, and a warrior, ready to face the impossible head-on. The sky above Denver was a war zone of its own. Thunder rolling, lightning flashing through dark clouds, gusts bending the massive Boeing as if it were paper. Elena's hands were steady on the controls, but every muscle in her body was taut, senses straining to catch the faintest shift in wind or instrument reading. She fought to keep the plane level as turbulence threw it like a toy. Passengers unaware that the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside the cockpit. And then the alerts began. Engine number 2 overheating, fire warnings flashing red on the console, fuel levels recalculating in real time to account for the extra strain. With a calm born of years in life or death combat, Elena ran the emergency procedures, throttling back, isolating fuel lines, activating suppression systems, every step executed with exacting precision. She coordinated with Denver Approach, reporting single engine operation, extreme weather, and the medical emergency on board. Her voice calm but urgent, slicing through static with absolute authority. Outside, the storm intensified, winds gusting beyond certified limits for the massive jet. The runway lights barely visible through sheets of rain. She banked sharply to align with the approach, adjusting for crosswinds. The plane heavy with fuel and passengers' momentum threatening to carry it past the glide path. Every calculation mattered. Airspeed, altitude, descent angle, wind correction, and runway distance. 1,000 tiny variables converging into one decisive moment. And then came another shock. An unidentified aircraft entered Denver's airspace, squawking a code reserved for hostile threats. Elena's pulse quickened. Her mind immediately evaluating the danger, but training from another life clicked in. This wasn't just about the plane anymore. It was about protecting the city below. Military aircraft were scrambled. F-22s responding, their voices crisp and professional over the radio, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. Debris from the potential threat and lightning storms intermingled. A deadly ballet she had to navigate while keeping the Boeing steady. Passengers gripped armrests, some whispering prayers, none realizing that their fate depended entirely on a woman whose past had been forged in fire. She adjusted flaps, throttles, and rudder, running simultaneous checklists while calculating emergency landing vectors. The autopilot was barely able to assist as she made micro-corrections. Each one a memory of dogfights past, every instinct fine-tuned for crisis. And then the call came that made her blood run cold. One engine officially failed. The fire suppression doing its job, but leaving her with only half the thrust she needed. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and leaned into the impossible. Descending rapidly, fighting crosswinds gusting over 30 knots, maneuvering a plane designed for comfort rather than combat with the precision of a fighter pilot. She imagined herself back in the F-16 cockpit, weaving between missiles, outthinking opponents. And for the first time in years, those instincts were alive again, guiding every decision. Thunder cracked close, shaking the fuselage, lightning illuminating the storm clouds like searchlights, each moment stretching for eternity. Air traffic control instructions, military communications, emergency procedures, weather updates all collided in a relentless torrent, and Elena absorbed it like water, channeling every bit into action. She visualized the runway, calculated the final approach, and refused to let fear or fatigue interfere. The aircraft lurched violently, rain pelting the windshield, engine throttling unevenly, but she held it steady, inching closer to the strip of lights glowing faintly through the storm. Every passenger, every life, every second mattered, and failure was not an option. And in that moment, Elena was no longer just a commercial pilot or a former fighter ace. She was the single force keeping a deadly storm at bay, a guardian guiding hundreds through chaos. The runway lights pierced the darkness like a beacon through a storm-tossed sea. Elena's hands gripped the yoke, muscles coiled, mind razor sharp, every sense firing at once. She was 3 miles out, heavy with fuel, one engine dead. Lightning illuminating the clouds in violent bursts, winds gusting unpredictably. The plane shuddered as it fought against the crosswinds, each movement threatening to push it off course. Air traffic control's voice crackled in her ear. Steady but strained. United 732, winds 280 at 32. Gusting 40, cleared for ILS approach runway 26. Elena's mind raced through every calculation she could remember. Adjusting for drift, flare timing, airspeed, descent rate, and braking distance. She imagined herself back in the cockpit of her fighter jet. The same instincts that had once saved her and her wingmen now guiding the mammoth airliner. Thunder rolled across the plains, lightning illuminating the city below. Each flash a reminder of the stakes. Passengers gripped armrests, some praying, others frozen, unaware that the woman in the cockpit was performing a ballet of precision and courage to keep them alive. She leveled the plane over the runway threshold, throttling the remaining engine to maximum safe power, flaps fully extended, rudder constantly adjusting for the violent crosswinds. Her heart pounded, yet her mind was crystal clear, every motion deliberate, every correction perfect. The first touchdown was rough. Wheels skimming wet asphalt, the plane bouncing slightly, but Elena absorbed it with expert skill, keeping the nose steady, controlling torque and thrust with uncanny precision. Fire trucks and emergency crews flanked the runway, lights spinning, ready for the worst. She guided the 777 down the strip, brakes fully engaged, reverse thrust activated, tires screeching against the wet tarmac. Debris from the storm and the nearby intercepted aircraft rattled past the windows. Yet she refused to flinch. Finally, the plane came to a stop, the enormous aircraft trembling but intact. Every passenger safe, every life preserved. The cabin erupted in stunned applause. Some crying, others whispering, "Thanks." But Elena barely noticed, focused on securing the cockpit and confirming everyone's safety. Her hands still shook slightly from adrenaline. Yet there was a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from surviving the impossible. For 12 years, she had hidden her true abilities, lived a life of quiet normally. But in this moment, she had reminded herself and the world what she was capable of. The storm outside raged on, but inside the plane calm returned, lives intact, and a secret long buried had proven itself in the most spectacular way imaginable. The engines finally cooled, the rain still drumming against the fuselage. But inside the cabin, a strange hush had settled. Passengers stared wide-eyed at one another, still processing what had just happened, their hearts racing, their hands trembling. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, offering reassurances, smiles tinged with awe, and Elena watched quietly from the cockpit doorway, exhausted but unbroken. Her co-pilot Liam was being tended to by paramedics, stabilized but pale, alive because she had acted instantly, decisively, without hesitation. Outside, fire trucks and emergency crews swarmed the aircraft, their lights casting red and blue reflections through the rain-soaked windows. Air traffic control continued to communicate, their voices carrying a mix of relief and amazement at the squadron that had scrambled F-22s to intercept the hostile aircraft. Stepped inside, uniform pressed, eyes sharp. "Captain Reyes," he said, voice calm but edged with intensity. "We need to speak about what just happened." Elena gestured for him to sit, tension coiling in her chest, knowing that military debriefings were never casual, especially when civilian and combat worlds collided. He opened a tablet, scrolling through flight tracks, radar, and radio logs, his gaze never leaving her. "Your performance was remarkable," he said slowly, measuring his words. "Single pilot operation, engine failure, severe crosswinds, hundreds of lives at risk, and you handled it flawlessly." Elena nodded quietly, almost embarrassed by the praise. "Just doing my job," she said softly, though every fiber of her being knew that this was far beyond ordinary duty. Vale studied her, the weight of his experience evident in his expression. "No civilian pilot could have done what you just did. The precision, the decision-making, this is military-level crisis management." The words hung in the air like a verdict, and Elena felt a flicker of something long buried. Recognition, fear, pride, and the burden of her hidden past all at once. "You have the skill of a fighter pilot," Vale continued, voice low. Almost a whisper, the instinct, the calm under fire. "Your call sign, Valkyrie? This is a legend we never thought we'd see in civilian skies again." For 12 years, she had hidden behind Captain Reyes, letting the world forget the missions, the victories, the losses. But now, her carefully constructed identity was unraveling. She felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely relieved. The mask she had worn for more than a decade had been lifted by necessity, not choice. Vale leaned back, studying her. "You saved lives today in a way that only someone with your experience could. That's something everyone here and in the military needs to know." Elena swallowed the weight of that truth pressing down. I left that life behind. I didn't want to be remembered for the wars I fought or the lives I took. I just wanted to live quietly." He nodded in understanding, but there was no mistaking the respect in his eyes. The acknowledgement that her hidden past had just made the difference between survival and disaster. And as the passengers were escorted off the plane, some shaking, some crying, some whispering thanks to a captain they barely understood, Elena realized something profound. She had saved hundreds of lives, and her secret had been revealed in the most dramatic, undeniable way possible. For the first time in 12 years, Valkyrie was not just a memory. It was real, present, and her actions had proven the value of every skill, every mission, every sacrifice she had ever made. The terminal was calm now, the storm outside fading into memory, but inside, Elena felt the weight of what had just happened pressing on her chest. Passengers moved past, some pausing to whisper thanks, some reaching out to shake her hand, and she smiled politely, letting their gratitude wash over her while hiding the full truth. She walked slowly through the concourse, each step echoing in the cavernous space, thinking of Liam, stable now, and of the 283 lives she had shepherded through the storm. 12 years she had spent burying Valkyrie, hiding the fighter pilot inside her beneath the uniform of a civilian airline captain. And now that life had collided violently with the one she had tried to build. Her thoughts drifted to Captain Sophia Blake, her wingman and closest friend, the woman she had lost in combat, whose sacrifice had haunted Elena's every decision since. She remembered Sophia's words from years ago, spoken with quiet conviction. "Our skills are a gift. Use them to protect always." And for the first time in over a decade, she realized she had honored that promise. The weight of grief and guilt she had carried for 12 years began to lift, replaced by something fragile yet powerful. Acceptance, the knowledge that Sophia's legacy had not been forgotten. Elena paused outside a small cafe in the terminal, taking a deep breath, letting herself finally acknowledge that the skills she had hidden, the instincts she had suppressed, had saved hundreds of lives that day. Her phone buzzed with messages, one from Liam, stable and grateful, one from a flight attendant who simply wrote, "You're a hero," and a dozen from passengers who would never forget the calm hand that guided them through chaos. She smiled faintly, thinking of the irony. The world saw only the airline captain, unaware of the fighter pilot behind the eyes. Yet in that storm, Valkyrie had returned, unstoppable and precise. Later, in the quiet of her apartment, she opened a dusty box that had sat untouched for 12 years, revealing her military decorations, flight logs, and a photograph of her and Sophia in front of their F-16s, young, confident, invincible. Elena traced her fingers over the picture, memories flooding back, the missions, the losses, the exhilaration of flight, the agony of command, and she realized that both lives, the pilot and the protector, were one and the same. In that moment, she made a decision. She would not hide anymore, not from the world, not from herself. She would use her experience to teach, to guide, to protect. Not as Valkyrie the fighter, but as Elena Reyes, the woman who had survived, learned, and now had the wisdom to share. A few months later, she stood before a classroom of military and civilian pilots at a prestigious aviation academy. Her uniform neat, her eyes sharp, her presence commanding. She shared the lessons of crisis management, situational awareness, and decision-making under pressure, weaving in wisdom drawn from a career that had spanned combat and commercial aviation. "You cannot hide from who you are," she told the young pilots. Voice steady, carrying the weight of experience. "Your skills are a gift, and with them comes responsibility. Protect lives, stay calm in chaos, and always trust your instincts." After class, she returned to her office, placing Sophia's photograph on her desk beside a miniature F-16 marked with Valkyrie, a gift from grateful fighter pilots. Elena smiled, the duality of her life finally reconciled, knowing that she had honored her past while shaping a future that would save lives in ways she had.